Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in. We got about 3 minutes before we start. Got a lot to talk about today, so it will be a close one, but hopefully we should be able to get all the stuff in that we need. Hopefully you all had a great, good day, good morning, and all that stuff. So we're going to be here in the afternoon. So welcome. Last class of the day.
What up, Mr. Cavazos?
Right. So make sure that you got your note pages ready to go.
How you doing, Mr. Cavazos?
Waiting on a few more people, but we are going to get started on time. Oh, I just realized my speakers are muted. So, Gio, if you called out, I did not hear you.
I said, what's up, Mr. Cavazos?
What's up, Gio? How's
It's
it going?
going great. I'm so excited
That's
for tomorrow.
Good. For Friday? Why? What's tomorrow?
I'm going to the orthodontist.
Oh, okay. That's
and I'm
cool.
getting my braces off for sure this time.
Oh, no wonder that's why
for
you're
sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's something to be excited about. I thought you were just excited about like being at the
I get to miss like the rest of my classes after lunch.
Cool. You're gonna watch the video though, right?
Of course I'm gonna watch the videos. Friday, no. Maybe like Sunday night.
Just make sure to get the exit ticket in on time.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm not on time. You know what I mean.
Call of Duty tomorrow. But no one cares about the new Call of Duty. That one's garbage.
The new Call of Duty tomorrow?
Yeah, Cold War.
Oh, that's right.
The multiplayer is garbage.
Each their own.
The campaign looks good though. Campaign, I'll give it that, sir. The campaign looks great.
Yeah. What is it like? Vietnam and stuff? Well, it can't be Vietnam. Well, it could be.
No, like Cold War. You know, like when
yeah, but there wasn't
Russia
actually fighting.
And the U.S. how they had like nukes pointing at each other.
You
know what I mean?
But yeah, but it's called a Cold War because there wasn't like actual war.
Well, yeah, that's true.
The Soviet Union and the U.S. But who knows? It's probably gonna be good.
And the zombies. I'm not a big fan of zombies, sir. But
yeah, me neither.
I'm excited to play this zombies.
Fair enough. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. It is 2:26, and I need to make sure that we get as much time in as possible. So I'm going to give you a minute, just a minute, on this slide. Make sure you got the key terms. Make sure you have the objective down. We are going to get started very quickly, and we're going to go through a lot. So make sure you got your notes page ready to go, because we are starting about 40 seconds left. We're going to move in quickly. I recommend screenshotting slides. I'll try to tell you which ones if we do not have time, so you can write them in after, because we're going to have to go through a lot today, and we have to do some help writing at the end today. So we will be on a short time period, but there will not be a regular history exit ticket because of it. All right, guys, focus up. Talk about Cold War later. in like February, not February, March. So let's move on. Sectionalism, conflicts. We're going to talk about how the sectionalism has spread so far in the US that there's going to be conflict now. We're going to lead to conflict. This is all that precursor stuff that leads up to the Civil War. So let's get into it. First key point. Substantial numbers of migrants continued to arrive in the United States from Europe and Asia, mainly Ireland and Germany, settling in ethnic communities where they continued to preserve elements of their language and their customs. So what you would need to focus on for notes for this key point, the numbers of migrants. We have already talked about the groups and where they're from, so you can leave out this part, but you need the second half, settling in ethnic communities where they preserve elements of their language and their cultures. You do need that part down in the key point. So make sure you get that part in the key point. Do not leave that out. That is super important. And that's a focus on a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So again, substantial numbers of migrants continue to arrive in the US, and they are settling in their own ethnic communities in order to preserve elements of their language and their customs. Does anybody think they know what that means? I'm going to leave this slide up for about 90 seconds so you can get the key point. What do I mean when I say like ethnic centers, ethnic communities that they settle there? What does that mean? What is it talking about? And if you don't know, just put don't know. But think about it for a second. What does that probably mean when I say migrants settle in their own ethnic communities? What does that mean? Give you about another minute. Again, think about that answer. Try to have something ready. Not quite. Think about the question, Z. I'm asking you more. What do you mean? What does it mean when it says settling in ethnic communities so they can preserve elements of their language and culture? Yeah, Max, pretty close. Pretty close. Anybody else? Time's almost up. What do we think? What do we think this means? Kind of like bombard me. What do you think this means? I should see more than just 2 or 3 people responding. You can send it privately. You can say it. You can put it in the chat. What do you think that means? And if you don't know, I don't know. I have no idea. Ethnic community, huh? What does that mean? Put it. So I can see kind of where we're at. Time is up. Let's go. Got a couple of I don't knows. Language. No idea. Don't know. Okay. So those of you that were responding to me and they were trying to give an answer, I appreciate that. Those of you that don't know, we're going to talk about it right now. Religion is actually a good part of that. So basically, and Z, Max, and Joe, you're hitting this, what I'm talking about. It's a place where everybody is either from a similar background or a similar culture or the same, usually the same. And they live in the same areas, kind of like a neighborhood. And they do it not necessarily on purpose, but the result is that their culture, their languages, their traditions, oftentimes their religion, is preserved. Has anybody heard, and then just either you can just shout this one out, yes or no. Have you heard of like Little Italy or Chinatown? Like, have you heard those terms before? Yes. So that's what these are. And those two are specific to like New York, and Chinatown is in a lot of like a lot of California West Coast cities have a Chinatown because that's where those immigrants went to. Right? Yeah, California has a lot of Chinatowns because there were a lot of Chinese immigrants in California. And it's not something that other people dictated, right? Like nativists or whites didn't say, hey, Chinese people, that's where you live. It wasn't that. It was the people and the migrants themselves actually picking this area and making it their own. And, all the best, foods and their languages and all of that stuff, all of the stuff they had at home, they make a small American version of it here. And it changes a little bit. It doesn't stay the same. And we're going to talk about it in more detail, but that's what it means. That's what ethnic community, that's what it means. It's not like, hey, you're forced to live here. It's more, hey, this is where we're all going to live. and we're gonna all try to live as close to home as we can. We're gonna bring home here, little piece of it, right? So let's get into this a little more. So nativism and the know-nothings. Couple of hilarious memes because we've talked about this before. Nativism and the know-nothings. Really quick, someone tell me what nativism is. What is nativism? Somebody tell me. Or type it, don't matter which one. We know this, we did this yesterday, we've done it before. Xenophobia, don't like immigrants. Yes, good, chat's coming in. I feel like I'm talking to ghosts when I talk to chat. Zoom ghosts. But those are good answers. Xenophobic, anti-immigrant way of thinking. Race is not the issue, country of origin is. Always remember that. Nativism is not about race, it's about where you're from. If you believe in white America, kind of be careful, don't make it about race. It's not about race. Don't get me wrong, if you're a nativist, you're probably a racist, right? But it's nativism itself, the term, is about immigration. You don't need to write this slide, no, because you already wrote this, right? This was on yesterday's notes. I'm just reiterating it again. The one you will need to add is the Know Nothing Party definition is here, the formal, right? Political party platform is based on nativism and anti-Catholic. So you might need to add the anti-Catholic part because I don't think we spent a lot of time on that in the past. We were talking about the immigrants part, right? So the Know Nothing Party, political party, their platform is nativism and anti-Catholic. You only need to add, because this should be from yesterday. Now, if you don't have any of this in your notes from yesterday, then of course you should write it, screenshot it, write it. But the only thing I want to make sure you have is the anti-Catholic part, right? Because these groups rise because of the massive wave of immigrants coming in. And make sure you know also, oh, they're not a fan of Catholics. There's a lot of anti-Catholic rhetoric in the United States in the 19th century, right? Those 1800s throughout. Questions on any of this? Because we talked about this, so you don't need to write this. Just that last anti-Catholic part, don't forget it. Good, move on then. So here is a slide to write. Again, strong anti-Catholic nativist movement arises. It's aimed at immigrants because the immigrants coming in are the ones that are all the Catholics. But despite those challenges, despite the Know Nothing Party existing, despite all that happening, immigrants develop their own communities, right? This is Little Italy. I picked Little Italy. Wow, I forgot to speak there. I picked Little Italy in New York because they had sweet black and white pictures that were really good at depicting like the markets and stuff that they had. I think that's actually might be in Little Germany or something because there's a German up there. But you get the idea. I am good. I don't know what happened. Despite these challenges, these communities still develop, literally places like that. The reason I have that picture of spaghetti and meat sauce up there is because spaghetti and meat sauce is a 100% made in American food. When you get spaghetti served to you like that, that is 100% American. It was made like during the post-World War II era, actually the World War II era. Italian food, Chinese food, a lot of stuff like that, like almost everything at Olive Garden. It's Italian food because it's Italians, but it's them taking the basics, the stuff that they had from home, and applying it to like American, what was available in America. Like for example, chicken parmesan's that's an American dish that was made in the United States. Now, eggplant parmesan is what they made in Italy. And then they took the parmesan system, right, and they applied it to chicken because in the United States there was meat everywhere. People could afford meat. It's the same thing with like spaghetti and meatballs and stuff like that. You bring the pasta, you bring the tomato stuff, and you infuse it with what's available in the United States. That's where a lot of modern Italian food comes from. It's kind of like the barbecue thing, right? You guys remember I talked about barbecue being a German immigrant thing? There's a lot of things we have today and a lot of cuisines and all sorts of stuff. I just pick food because look at me, I love food. But that are base sausages are German as well, right? That are from immigrants. It's something that happens. Tex-Mex is the exact same thing, right? Picture, I always use tacos as an example. If you grew up on the border, you have people that, if you know people that did, right? Like tacos in Mexico don't look the way they do in San Antonio, or the way they do in Austin, or the way they do in other Texas towns, right? Because there's elements of Americanism infused into what the taco is. And it's the same for all sorts of ingredients and all sorts of foods. So yeah, it's everywhere. There is a whole term for Tex-Mex, right? That I saw there in chat because it's American mixed with Mexican food. So yeah, it's all over the place. Immigrant life, it's a huge major aspect. Again, get that last bullet point down, especially because that last bullet point is about the cultures. It adds right into that key point. Because the other stuff about the nativists, you already know that. So I'll give you a quick 45 seconds. If you need more time, let me know. If there's any questions, go ahead and let me know that as well. About 15 seconds. More time? Okay, we'll do another 30 seconds. This last slide, again, this first slide, I should say, is more like reviewing. We're going to get into the details of some of the stuff we talked about yesterday in the future slides coming up. 20 more seconds. By the way, and you guys like Chinese food, like most of that is like American influenced. Like Panda Express, most of that stuff's America or American influence. So next key point is up. Some Northerners did not object to slavery on principle, but claimed that slavery would undermine a free labor market. As a result, a free soil movement arose that portrayed the expansion of slavery as incompatible with free labor. And when you see the term free labor, you might want to add this because it's a little confusing. When people of this era use free labor, they don't mean working for free, but they mean people who are not enslaved working. So like a factory worker it's free labor because it's a free person working. Does that make sense? Free labor is a free person working versus slave labor, which is an enslaved person working. Make sense? They're not working for free. Can I get some yeses and nos? Because I gotta know if that makes sense. I cannot leave here without knowing that. Okay. Free labor is a free person working. Okay. So I'll give you a minute and a half, or yeah, a minute and a half should be enough. If it's not, let me know for this key point. Free equals free. You make that joke, but again, I'm gonna read some SAQ somewhere, and somebody's gonna say free labor and refer to them as slaves, and I'm gonna, every time I see stuff like that, I die a little bit every day. Lose about a minute or two off of the life because I'm like, ooh. So don't make that mistake. Free labor, somebody who is free. They don't work for free, but they are free. It's a free person working. Free labor, free person working. Slave labor, enslaved person working. About a minute left on the clock. And if you're struggling with the pace today, again, I apologize, but we got to get that tell pass in. I'm trying not to lose a day. So the slides are up for this. If you want to go along with the slides on your machine, you can do that. But I'm going to try to go through this a little quicker than normal because we're already low on time. 30 seconds. The slides are already in Google. All right, time is up. We're going to move on. So the free soil movement. You don't write everything here. This is something that's happening in the background. This first point is something we should already know, right? The North's expanding manufacturing relies on free labor. In contrast to the Southern cash crop economy that depends on slave labor. These are already a given. You shouldn't have to write that, but if you do, write it. The free soil movement was planned by Northern Democrats and Whigs who supported things like the Wilmot Proviso. Who can remind me what the Wilmot Proviso was? Somebody remind me, what was it? Either in the chat or just come out and say it. What did it do? What was it trying to do? The Wilmot Proviso. If you don't remember, but don't remember. No, not quite close. Abolish, if you're gonna say abolish slavery, where? Where is it going to forbid slavery? Where? Because it's somewhere specific. In new land that was acquired from who? Because it's really specific and you got to know it. In the new territories acquired from who? From Mexico, yes. Not Texas. Texas we got on our own, but the Mexican cession, right? So I'm going to put all y'all's responses together because y'all got there in pieces. The Wilmot Proviso, if we remember, and if you didn't remember, write it again, was a plan to ban slavery in newly acquired territory from Mexico. It's not abolishing slavery. It doesn't affect slavery anywhere else, but it bans it in the new territory from Mexico, all of it. That's the Wilmot Proviso. And a lot of, again, Northern Democrats and a lot of Whigs support this plan. This party, this group is what will kill the Whig party. So do we write all the bullets? I would write the second and I would write the third. You don't necessarily need the first. It didn't work. No, it doesn't work. The Wilmot Proviso fails. It doesn't get voted. Southern Democrats kill it. But unlike abolitionists who want to end slavery, the Free Soil Party just wants to stop it from spreading. Like a lot of them don't necessarily disagree with slavery, or they don't disagree with the concept of slavery. They just want it to stop spreading because they're worried it's going to affect them. It's going to affect their bottom line. They want the opportunities in the West to be preserved for whites. And they also want things like free homestead grants. A homestead's like, hey, here's a chunk of land, and as long as you can live on it for a certain number of time, it's yours. And so the Free Soil Party is all about, hey, preserve the West for the white man and stuff like that. They don't say that. That's not quite their message, but that's what their goal is. So they're trying to stop slavery from expanding, but they're only doing it so that way the opportunities for them and a bunch of Southern landowners don't buy up the land and just put plantations on it. So it's a weird group, and it's the group that'll kill the Whig Party because so many more Northerners, for reasons we're going to get into in a little bit, are against slavery as a concept. They're like, why are we going to keep this? It's horrible. And that's why the Whigs go away. It's why the Democrats split, and you basically get Confederates and everybody else, right? Because this concept is a really important one. You need this slide to write it down. I'm going to give you 2.5 minutes on it. But it kills the Whigs, and it splits the Democrats, and it will be why a new political party can rise up in the North. You know what the name of that party was? It's Lincoln's party. Nobody? What's the name of Lincoln's political party? It's the reason it's going to be able to rise up is the failure of this movement. Yeah, the Republican Party. Good. They're not a thing yet, but they will be. Not the penny gang. Yeah, I don't think you could call a political party the penny gang. I don't think that would work. About 2 minutes left. Again, free soil movement. It's all about stopping the expansion of slavery. And they wanted to make the opportunities out West more available to them. Yes, and it's not so much about money, it's about the opportunity. It's not that they want to get paid or anything, it's more that they want the opportunity of the West to not be taken over by Southern plantation owners. And so they're doing it for themselves. It's not about the slavery. In fact, like the previous key points I read, a lot of them don't disagree with slavery. They just disagree with expanding slavery. And that's the issue, right? That's why abolitionists can't agree with them. It's why the parties like the Whigs, it's why the Whigs aren't around anymore. Because most of the Whigs are kind of in free soils. And the ones that aren't into this go to the Republican Party. This is a weird middle ground that only a very specific type of people, type of person enjoys. It's not something that this does not get it's popular among some people, but not most people. But it is still a major aspect of this because it opens the door. for that new party to come up, that new party of radicals, those radical Republicans and their abolition. How dare they, right? That's the mindset pre this group. Okay, we're going to go and move on. If you need more time, get the screenshot. And we're going to talk about the next key point. African American and white abolitionists, although a minority in the North, mounted highly visible campaign against slavery, presenting moral arguments against the institution, assisting slaves in escaping, and sometimes expressing a willingness to use violence. That was very rare, but every now and then, but very rare. So it was not a violent movement. So I'll give you about 2 minutes for this slide because it's a lot. It's an important key point though. And now we're going to get into the details about several of some of the better, not better, they were all awesome. I'm just going to talk about some of my favorite abolitions. I'm going to talk about my 3 favorite ones. And there's plenty more. Like I'm going to leave out the Grimke sisters just for the sake of time. But eventually, yeah, hopefully next week I'm going to figure out a way to give you guys an opportunity to look into more of these figures. That's all I'll say for now because I got to figure out if it works. But I think it'll work. So I'm going to leave out people like the Grimkes, but I will talk about my 3 favorite abolitionists. And I think we will end with just enough time to do the writing, depending on how this goes. About a minute left. All right, we're going to go to move on. So first person on our list is a guy named Frederick Douglass. You don't need to write the quote down. This is just one of my quotes, one of the quotes from him. Without struggle, there is no progress. So Frederick Douglass was born in slavery. While he was a slave and young slave, I believe, he was taught to read by his owner's wife. Eventually, his owner got mad at the wife and said, stop teaching that slave how to read. But Frederick Douglass was bitten with the reading bug and continued to practice on his own, getting newspapers and all this stuff. And he learns how to read on his own, becomes very literate, teaches other slaves how to read as often as he can as a slave. But he eventually escapes from Baltimore, I believe is where he was, and he makes it to New York and then to Massachusetts. Once free, he will start attending abolitionist meetings. He'll be married, by the way. And his accurate portrayals of slave life, his articulation, the fact that he's literate and able to speak and write with the best of them, really motivates and moves people. He will quickly become a very well-known, very famous, and very important, influential abolitionist, writer, speaker, everything. He uses his words and his mind to convince a lot of people about the evils of slavery. And his newspaper, the North Star, was a very prominent abolitionist newspaper. When the Civil War breaks out, he will personally speak to Abraham Lincoln and petition Lincoln to free millions of slaves all over the Union. Their initial meetings were very contentious because Douglass very much wanted to end slavery. And early on, when we get to this later on in a couple of weeks, it'll make sense, Lincoln is very reluctant to free slaves. Became well known. Why didn't he get captured by his owner? So that's a great question. He actually had to travel around all the time. He had to go abroad all the time, like to other countries, to avoid being captured by his owner, because his owner was always trying to capture him again. His owner sensed he was wanted, kind of, in that sense. To avoid capture, he had to move around a lot. So that is a great question. That's a good thing to catch. And they did try to catch it. They just couldn't. Kind of like the person on the next slide where they tried to get caught. They just couldn't. And again, Douglas, by this point, by the time he's at the point where he's getting famous, he has the means to travel around, go to other countries, keep writing from there. He's not using finesse. He's straight up like speaking out, being loud, being vocal, being well known, and then he's leaving, right? He'll be on the move. He's moving around. He's avoiding them. He's evading them, I should say. It's not so much finesse. He's openly doing it. He's like, no, I'm not going to say that because I don't know for sure. But imagine talking what kind of. He'll speak somewhere, and then he'll leave. He moved around a lot, all that stuff, until, obviously they're freed and it's not an issue after the Civil War. But pre-Civil War, it's moving around and all that stuff. Even during, it's not as big of an issue because Civil War. But yeah, he's moved around a lot to avoid that stuff. So again, what do you need here? You need that second bullet point, the mostly, and I would get the name of his newspaper and that he spoke with Lincoln. He's one of the first African Americans invited to the White House by the president to sit and talk and have a meeting. So I'll give you about a minute and a little more than a minute and a half, but not much more. Because you mainly need that second bullet point and the little parts about Lincoln and about his newspaper, the North Star. Any other questions, let me know. That was a really good one about Douglas. For him, you mean as far as the trying to evade capture thing? She didn't go abroad. She just was kind of badass and just evaded capture. She was actually wanted for a while. She's like one of the most wanted people in the South. Like think cowboy outlaw, like wanted poster, like catch this one. Did he die on slave? Yes, he died free. So Frederick Douglass dies of old age. I forget the year, but yeah, he's he gets away. He was never captured. He was just during pre-Civil War, always on the move to evade capture. And he's Frederick Douglass is he's one of my favorites. We're gonna look at his 4th of July speech, which a lot of people tend to quote and misreference sometimes, but it's really good. It's a really, really, really good speech. When he talks about 4th of July to you does not mean what it means to me. It's really good. It's such a good speech. He was such a good speaker. He's one of the better ones of this time period, I would argue. So that's about 2 minutes. So we're going to move on. If you need time on this slide, snapshot it or grab it in Google because we're going to move on. And we're going to talk about Harriet Tubman. Her nickname was Moses on the Underground Railroad. She was a conductor and she was very good at what she did. She was a thinker and a strategist. Oh, hold on, let me answer this. Remember, I mentioned how he learned to speak so well because the wife of his owner taught him to read, and then he just kept reading after they made her stop. She was secretly doing it, yes. Actually, I did not mention that part. She was doing it in secret, and then when the husband found out, he was like, stop doing it. But by that time, he had already learned, and they tell stories about how he would watch like other kids learn, like the other kids in the house, because he was in the house when he was younger. And the other kids learn, and he would also sit there and learn, like in the background. So that's how he learned how to read. That's how he became so good at it, and then he just kept practicing. He was always trying to practice. You got to practice that stuff to get good at it. So Harriet Tubman, nicknamed Moses, used her talents to outwit many people, and she led hundreds of slaves to freedom. She was a fugitive in America, specifically in the South, but was never captured. She fought in the Civil War. She was kind of like a spy. She would sneak onto plantations and get all the info. She's one of the first women to lead a raid in the U.S. military history. She led a raid on a Confederate plantation. She was a nurse. She was a scout. And after slavery ended, she also was a women's rights activist. I'll answer that question in a second. So for the Harriet Tubman slide, you need the first two, and then I would get the part at the end. The middle part's just kind of extra information. He would sneak that stuff in, and there was a lot of like newspapers and stuff that he would kind of find, sneak in, read. He didn't have like a book collection. You're right. That's a good observation. He wasn't allowed to, so he would sneak it in. He was breaking the rules. It's a form of disobedience, right? It's a form of protest. He wanted to learn how to read. He understood the power of it. And he taught other slaves how to read as well while he was still a slave. But he escaped very young. He was like 18, 19, I think, maybe 20 when he escaped. Because I think he escapes in 1838 and I think he was born in 1818. But he was very young. But yeah, he snuck him in. He would find him. He would take him. He wouldn't notice. Remember, you're not necessarily noticed as a slave. It's not that easy. It's not, you're not out on, people aren't watching you all the time. He's able to kind of go around and notice pretty easily. But yeah, Harriet Tubman was actually doing some of the fighting, actually leading. She was an Underground Railroad conductor, famously. Led troops, and not led troops, but led a raid in the Civil War, spied for the Union all the time. And then would later on champion women's rights causes. This is the era where we start getting into some photographs. Some of these people have photographs of themselves. Most of them do. Another minute and a half on Harriet Tubman, and then we'll move on to our last abolitionist. In 45 seconds. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Last one, William Lloyd Garrison. He's one of the better known abolitionists of his era. As a white man, he had certain status that other abolitionists didn't, because a lot of prominent abolitionists were women or African Americans. In 1831, he founded his newspaper, The Liberator. That was the, you saw the teams thing I try to put, typically I use the same ones, but today found it suiting to use a Liberator title, right? A little Liberator heading under there. So The Liberator was his newspaper, great name for an abolitionist newspaper. Very popular, anti-slavery. It was, again, made to persuade people against it. His writing helped change the world to an extent, but mainly, you know, to his, that's what he used. That was his tool. That was his weapon. But the reason I like William Lloyd Garrison so much is because, is that double O? Yes, it is. One of my favorite things about him that he did that other white abolitionists didn't do as much is he's very aware. He's self-aware. He knows that being a white man, he has certain, what's the word I'm looking for? Not qualities, but advantages that he uses, and he uses them purposely. He can get into rooms and talk to people that other abolitionists wouldn't be allowed to. He will be taken seriously when other abolitionists won't be. And he uses that as a weapon in his war against slavery. And it was a war. I don't like the term privilege because it implies he doesn't know what he's doing. He knew he was privileged. Yeah, you can say privileged. He knew he had advantages. He knew that society was built to support him, right? When you say, oh, you're privileged, it's almost like an insult. And especially in the context, it's like connections in a way, but it's more than that because it's just by the nature of him being white. So it's privilege to an extent. You can say privilege if it makes sense to you that way. Say it. He knows what his privilege is being a white man in society, and he uses it. He uses it to form connections with people that say wouldn't listen to a guy like Frederick Douglass because of what Frederick Douglass looks like, right? Or won't listen to people that aren't on here, the Grimke sisters, because they're both Southern women. But William Lloyd Garrison knows he's a white male. He can get things done that other people can't. And all these people talk to each other, by the way. Like him and Frederick Douglass were buddies. When Frederick Douglass is just starting writing, he's writing in the Liberator. And then eventually Frederick Douglass will will make his own newspaper when he becomes prominent enough. So these guys work hand in hand. And Garrison is a big fan of theirs, and he uses his status as a tool, as a weapon, as a shield almost, right? Especially early on in people like Douglass's career. And I really admire that because a lot of people either don't know, for some people it is like it's privilege. They don't realize it's theirs, and others like won't use it. He used it. He was very aware of what he was. And he spent a lot of time like in Black communities and churches and things like that in Massachusetts. And it's part of why he's aware. It's part of why he's able to do that coming up. It's part of why he's such an avid abolitionist. He very famously, and I've said this already, right? I think it's like in 1839, 37, something like that, had a big gathering and he burned a copy of the Constitution. He was like, this document was made in slavery, it is sin, and stuff like that. He's a very extreme guy, very intense. But he was a very firm believer in abolition. So he's always one of my favorite to talk to because you wouldn't think it looking at him. You look at that picture and I show you who's this guy, you'd be like, oh, he's one of those Hudson River School artists, right? He doesn't look like a mean, rough and tumble abolitionist, but he's one of the hardcore of the hardcore. Which points to your right? Middle part. All you need the middle slide. I would get most of them because it's good context, but I would get the middle part you shared. I wish he's one of the people that would be on my list to talk to. Him, Douglass would be up there too. Like I kind of think I would want to talk to them both together. Just be curious, right? Have like your historical barbecue that we did at the very beginning of the year. They'd be two good ones to have, Douglass and Garrison. Harriet Tubman in there because she was a conductor on the railroad. She didn't really write. She wasn't a writer. In fact, Harriet Tubman was illiterate. He didn't let that stop her though, not for 1 second. About another minute, and then we're gonna. He is right. I should get little glasses, little tiny ones. Yeah, he's got those little spectacles, as they called them. That's actually what they called them. They weren't glasses yet. His glass eye. He didn't have a glass eye. Little less than a minute, and then we're gonna move on. This is the last slide for today, by the way. The other slide, so I'm saying needs one. The other slide is repeat information, so I'll just talk about it at the top of tomorrow's lesson. So we're gonna go into what we are doing next. So it's already in Google Classroom, but I will talk you through it in a second. You are still here, do not leave yet. I need to give you the final instruction for the day. 30 more seconds. Okay, so in Google Classroom, under in-class assignments, is an ELA Telpus prompt. All you got to do is click the link to the Google Doc and write in your response to the prompt. It's just like if you were in class doing this. There's no exit ticket. It's just this. You have a little less than 20 minutes to write it. Here's what you got to do. Use the class time to write this out. If you submit this completed, I will replace a full grade in the gradebook that is missing or that you haven't done for extra credit. This counts as extra credit for this class. All you got to do is submit it and turn it in. At 3:25, when the class ends, I'm going to tag everybody on Teams and say, turn it in. There are 63 of you here, 62 of you here. There should be at least 62 responses. If you don't submit this, I'm going to try to track you down and get you to submit it. It is extra credit. It is free points in this class. There's only like 6 of you that don't need free points in this class. And those 6 of you still need to do this because it'll be free points moving on, as long as you turn this in. So I know usually in the past, I like to make it a practice where it's history, so you're actually doing something, but that's not the case today. Get it done. We got to do it. You do it every year. It's nothing new. Just have it done and submitted at the end of the class time. How long again? Type as much as you can. I don't even know what that means. Have as much of it as you try to finish the page. I mean, you don't have to finish the page. Try to finish the page. It's typed, so it'll be a little less than a page, obviously. Try to finish the page. Here's best practice, best rule of thumb. 15 minutes left in class. Type for the 15 minutes. Treat it like a quick write. Only it's not quick. You don't have to be in this call though, but I'm going to tag everybody right at 3:25. Hey, turn this in. And it shouldn't be something you turn in late. So just type for the 15 minutes. It's an argumentative essay about, is homeschooling better than public school education system? It's a weird prompt, but there it is. So make sure that you get it done. I'm gonna stop my screen share. You're good to leave this call. I've got nothing else for you. There's no exit ticket, so there's not much support I can give you on this. But have a great rest of your day, guys, and make sure that you're getting it done. Oh, looking for people. Yeah, I'm gonna track you guys down like a bounty hunter. If y'all don't submit that. So make sure you get that in there. Have a good one, guys. All right, I will see y'all tomorrow. We'll finish up all this stuff and get into Lincoln being elected and all that stuff.
Yo, sir, create a Kahoot.
What Kahoot?
For a review.
Maybe when we're doing semester review. We're not reviewing right now.
I know, but I want to do a history Kahoot.
I'll set one up for when we do semester review, because we're gonna have a few review days and practice days and all that stuff. I gotta make the packet this weekend though, so I gotta do that too. But I will make one.
All right, sir.
Yep. Godric, is
Have
that
a good one
with a cowboy hat? What's going on? That's funny though, that kitten. I'm sorry guys, I'm fixed on this kitten with a cowboy hat thing that Godric's got going on there.